Recording, and we're going to go to intro.
We are the only show for independents all around, giving you a platform to spread your word all over town. Cast the Craze is the place to promote to your fans with the dream of Medina and Sam the Crazy Man. Subscribe to our show and never miss an episode. It's time to get your mans, listen to us on the go. Updated every week, we never miss a day. Join the squad, come on in. It's time to catch the Craze. If you are an independent, catch the Craze. Making moves on your own, catch the Craze. On your grind in the streets, catch the Craze. Join the movement, catch the Craze.
Yeah, George, we did it again. Come on now. You know you want to do it. Catch the Craze.
Welcome to Catch the Craze podcast. I am your host with the most, Sam the Crazy Man Vert, and I am with
George, the dreamer.
Remember this? you don't remember that? Your face is priceless. You don't remember? You don't go on TikTok.
No.
So they have this thing where they have all these different skits. It's like yum yum yum.
Holy cow. Yeah, no, never heard that. Never heard that in my life.
Oh, poor George. He's like, yo, Sam, lost it.
But when you said remember this, it sounded like this was from like back in the days.
On the Boulevard of Linden. Yeah, I know. So welcome to a new episode of Catch the Craze podcast. And today we'll have a very special or return guest. We first had her on the show back in 2007, I believe it was, back in the early days of the Catch the Craze, and she is a screenwriter. She's written books, written screenplays, worked on animation. She's done it all, and she's returning. So we're gonna follow up on her career, Shannon Muir, and I'm excited to see how her career has evolved since the last time we had her on the show.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Today is December 18th, episode number 216. Christmas is right around the corner, and like Sam said, Shannon Muir. Return guest, man. It's been years since we last spoke. Well, I wanted to listen to the show that we recorded way back when. I couldn't find it in our archives, but that's on me. Shannon Muir, yeah, she's had quite a career since she was last on the show. I think she was here promoting a book called Gardener's Guide to Writing and Producing Animation, right? And Now she's like run the gamut. She currently, and I don't know how current her website is, but it looks like she's doing some writing for Japanese animation. So that's cool, man.
Right,
It'll be
cool.
Fun to have her on the show and ask her and speak to her and see what's been going on. But yeah, that's gonna be freaking dope.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to pull my leg. You want an encore?
I have no words.
At least I want to hear him again.
Okay, yes.
George's like, yo, Sam lost his mind. It's on the paint. I've been inhaling all the fumes.
You've been in that room way too long.
Too long, bro. Too long.
Holy cow.
It's been a long time. Should have left you.
Behind the scenes, we always like to talk about what happens behind the scenes. So we had a little late start. Not that this is live, but we usually record our show.
Yeah.
Right? And this one started a little late today because Sam found through trial and error that certain things aren't working exactly the way they were working in the original lab.
Yeah. So what you see is a long view of the studio. It's actually bigger than what you see. It looks like it's a short little space that I'm tied up in a closet or something. And you got my boy Alf in the background, right? And the Muppets. But the this is the new layout of the studio, and I haven't, because we're recording this back early November. This show airs in, I think, December 18th.
December 18th today's.
And today's date is December 18th, but it was then, but now, right? Yeah, I love how that works, right? So, so where the previous studio, I had 3 monitors. Now I was working off of just the big flat screen on the wall, and my iMac. Instead of having all these monitors across, I just have one on the side. Now I didn't check to see. I was working on checking the sound systems. I didn't check to make sure that OBS was able, the dimensions of that would tie into OBS. So because of that, I had to disconnect the TV from the computer, bring in another monitor last minute. Joe's sitting there waiting for like 20 minutes as I'm trying to fix all this stuff so we can have a seamless operation. But that's the stuff that happens. It's funny because when Joe Rogan moved the studio to Texas, he was having a lot of technical issues in the beginning.
Yeah.
And when you go to a new setup and you're disconnecting things and reconnecting things and you're trying to do all these other things, this is what happens. And it's going to take me a couple of weeks just to calibrate everything, make sure everything's in sync. I learned that my Mac cannot support having 4 cameras, 7 hard drives, and a Wacom Cintiq at the same time, right? So when I connected it, everything was flashing and things were going all nuts on me, and so I had to disconnect that. So now I have to connect my Cintiq to my laptop, but my laptop doesn't have the appropriate connection. So now I have to go and buy an adapter. This is a pain in the keister, bro. A pain in the keister.
Listen, when it's finally all done, it'll be great. So because we record shows so far in advance.
Yeah.
It's November, we record in December. So you think that by the time we start recording shows for like January and February, it'll be kind of seamless and
smooth.
And more.
So yeah, because this is the first actual show recording. I did with the new setup.
Right.
Because I didn't have all this technical stuff, that big screen and all that stuff. So, what makes it, and then, I also learned that because I'm on this side of the room and the monitor's over there and the computer's over there, that the Bluetooth, the wireless mouse only has a range. So this is a 9-foot table. I guess it only has a range of 2-3 feet from the computer, because so there's a delay. So now I have to get an extender USB cord to be able to connect my mouse to the computer, so I don't have those issues. It's all these things you learn later on. I thought I can go anywhere in the house with the mouse and be fine. Nope. Yeah. Obviously not. So
are you going to be recording from there, from that part of the table? Like you're not going to get closer to the, because you moved last time we recorded, you were on the other side of the table.
Yes, I was on the other. I was going to record there. I said, let me see what it feels like to record from this side, because I also know that when hopefully by the time January comes, everyone's gotten their chips in their system so that you can be tracked and your COVID, whatever. Because that's what the vaccine is, a chip. So, it's that conspiracy stuff. But hopefully, and then but I'm sitting here to see what it feels like when you come back to the studio. If you're over there, because I know you're a little nervous about the COVID stuff. So it's like if you sat over there. So I'm just testing all the different setups, the layouts, to see the camera angles.
Yeah. I see you say I'm nervous. I think I already had it, bro. Like I honestly,
I had it when it first jumped off.
I think I had it. I don't know. I mean, listen,
I was out for 2 weeks, bro.
No, I hear you. The other thing, what was I going to say? Oh, all right. So for the public who's watching our show on December 18th and you're confused as to what the heck Sam is talking about, Sam has done a thing where he recorded the process of moving from our upstairs studio where we recorded almost 200 shows to the downstairs studio, which is where he is right now. And he's actually like recorded videos showing you the process, behind the scenes stuff. And it'll be like, so if you follow him on Catch the Craze, you'll be able to see that stuff. And then you'll be like, oh, that's what he's talking about, why he's in that room. So
Word.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know what the heck we're talking about, that's what this is all about. But yeah, hey man, it's crazy. It is.
It's nuts. Yeah. So actually, we're recording this before the unveiling, because I still haven't finished. So
All right.
like this bookshelf wasn't supposed to be here. The one I wanted, somebody got it. And so I was like, all right, whatever. And I haven't even organized my books yet, so I just threw everything on there to get everything off to whatever. And then this here has all of my collectibles. I haven't even put it in yet, so I still have them sitting upstairs. The coffee machine is going to go there on top of the refrigerator. So here's a refrigerator. So when Georgie, Porgy, and guests are over, I'll have pop in there.
It's like a little man cave in there.
I'm telling you, when I come in, I don't go out. So by the time you're hearing this or watching this, you would have learned that I've announced that I was working in retail and the company went belly up and filed bankruptcy and closed down shop. So November 30th, I was out of a job, and talking to my sister-in-law and family, I decided to take the plunge and go after my passion and try to work for myself and see what happens. I'm rolling the dice, and so I'm not going back to retail for a minute. I'm going to take the next 6 months and try to make this pop off. So I am a true entrepreneur at this point, and this is December. This is 2 weeks into being an entrepreneur. By the time you watch this, I get up 8 in the morning. Oh, actually, I get up. I guess it's 5 in the morning. I go work out. Then I come into the studio at 8 in the morning, and I don't leave till about 5 p.m. And then I do the family thing. But from 8 to 5, there ain't no stopping me. I come in. It's work.
So if you missed the show where it's the big reveal, go back and watch it.
Yes, you'll get a full 360 view of the there go my dogs. I haven't put the soundproofing on the door. I'm working on that one. But you'll get the full 360 of the studio.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow. So we have a lot going on today. We have our guests. We also have obviously Get Your Meds.
Yes.
This week.
Yep. So do you want? And what is the topic of Get Your Meds before I go into it? I cut you off.
The topic is the best and worst advice you've ever given or received.
Here we go.
And there's no Get Your Meds. Oh, there it is, but there's no camera. So
we're going to go back to this, but hold on. Oh, here it is.
It's time for your medicine.
All right, so the best and worst topic, advice you've ever received. I think that's a great topic. I want to show the image in a second, if I can do that. But so tell us why that topic, Georgie Porgy, put in pie.
So, every time, obviously when we're doing the shows, we try to keep the topics not just current, but something that people can relate to or speaks to our audience, which is independent artists, people who follow independent artists, people who enjoy independent films, independent music, and those kind of things. So Sam and I were having a conversation today. I'm like, yo, Sam, I don't know, what should we talk about today? And Sam was like, yo, you know what? Let's talk about the best and worst advice we've ever been given. So that's how the topic came about. And so in thinking about that, I was thinking, okay, like obviously we don't have time to talk about every single piece of advice people have given us, whether they were good or bad. So I narrowed it down to just the best and the worst I've ever received. I don't know what you're thinking, Sam, but for me, I think that, and this is gonna be cliche because whatever, the worst advice ever given was give up and go get yourself a job, make some money that way, and stop doing this, Yeah. Worst advice. Because I think that for us creatives, no matter where we are in life, we always seem to want to come back to this. Or there's always something missing. There's a piece that we're like, damn, I should have done that, or why didn't I try harder at this? So I think giving up isn't necessarily the answer. It's just giving it your all and see what happens.
You heard what he said, right?
That's been the worst. What about you, Sam?
No matter what the world may do to us, no matter if they try to tear our world apart, it won't get through to us. Remember that? It never changed, but it's in our heart.
What show is that from?
That was a song. It was a song. I don't think it was
I thought it was a theme song for a show.
no. That was
Back in the
What Would
days.
We Do, Baby? That was the other thing. But no. The worst advice I was given. The worst advice I was given is stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
Know your place. Stay in your lane.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, ooh. Oh. See, that's a trigger. See, and this is just not in comics, but this is related in business. So in business, what happens is rank and file was a big thing. And so if you were lower ranked, you weren't expected to speak unless you were asked a question. You weren't expected to participate unless you were invited to. And so if you spoke out of turn, you were given the cold shoulder or shut down. And, and you heard that in the business world. And for me, that was a trigger to say, no. Because I watched what it did to people and and in the beginning, because I didn't understand, I stood in my lane. But I was watching decisions being made that just didn't make sense. Where I felt my gut told me that the outcome wasn't going to be what they were anticipating. Or I had to do some things that I didn't buy into. So after those failures, I was like, oh, hell no. Right, wrong, or indifferent, whether or not you buy into what I'm going to say or my contribution, I'm going to get it on record. I'm going to make sure you know what I'm thinking. I'm going to make sure you know exactly what my intentions are. And when I changed direction and I got the courage to speak up, that's when, in the beginning, it was a little disheartening because, rank and file come after you and say, who told you to speak? What, all these other things. But I kept moving forward. And then I earned a seat at the table because I wasn't speaking just to be heard. I was speaking because I did my homework and I knew I had an alternative way of doing something or an idea that wasn't considered because sometimes they rush to make decisions. And then because I started establishing credibility, so, I'm glad that I realized that the decision to stay silent is mine, not someone else. So the worst decision was to stay in my lane and know my place. And so my place is wherever I decide I'm going to be. And that happens with a maturity. As I moved on, I was like, well, no, this doesn't make sense. I'm going to change this up.
Yeah. See, I think when we talk about things like that and advice that's given to us, hey, you should, speak when you're spoken to, or you should just stop doing what
I'm like,
yeah. To me, that's not even advice at that point, right?
No.
That's just negative
Feedback.
Energy and people.
Yeah.
And so be careful, because sometimes it could be a mentor that does these things, that says these things to somebody,
Yes.
And so you have to be careful and you have to know where it's coming from and where that person is coming from and see if you can trust the advice you're being given by this person, right? Now, the other side of that coin is the best advice that I've been given. And I'm relating it to the comic world. I'm not relating it to the real world so much, but specifically to the comic world. And to me, I think the best advice that I ever received in the comic world, and I don't even know where I got it, I just think it was just reading, was when you're creating a comic, okay, and you're about to put it out into the market, make sure you have your 3 issues in before you put the first one out.
Word.
And I think that's very important because we talked about this with the guys when we did the live show last month with Anibal and with Jonathan, where sometimes Anibal said he had a bunch of books of independent creators and comic books that he only saw the first issue of. And why? Because we jumped to create that first issue, put it out there, but there's nothing behind it.
Right.
There isn't issue 2, 3, 4, 5. There isn't even issue 2.
Yep.
We just want to put it out so fast that we forget that, dude, if this is an ongoing series, we need to have the rest of the books ready, because the public's not going to wait.
Yeah.
So I think to me, as far as the comic world goes, and I think for anybody listening who wants to come out and put a comic book out, and if it is an ongoing series, make sure you have at least 3 books in the can before you actually put your first book out. That way you're ahead of the game. You're not behind the 8 ball anymore. You're out there, you have your first book, but you know that your second and third is going to come out, so that you're working on your 4th, 5th, and 6th. And that way you're not, oh man, I just finished the first one. It's going to take a year for me to finish the second one, because it could, Right. So I think that to me, that's been the best advice I've received when it comes to the comic book world and then creating and things of that nature.
That's a good one.
Yeah. What do you have?
I think the best one. See, you're going to comics. For me, these are life lessons that I apply in everything I do. And it was my mom. Mm-hmm. My mom taught me how to plan. I remember, and I go back to when I was 13 years old. When I was 13 years old, the big, everybody in the neighborhood, the big thing was everybody had piercings, right? So all the guys would get into piercings, right? It was the style. We had the Timberland boots, the baggy pants. We had the starter jackets. We had the hoops, whatever, and the big old hats. And I wanted to pierce my ears. My mom's like, she goes, "Are you following others?" I was like, "No, it's the fashion, Mama." And she's like, "Well, if you want it next year on your birthday, you can do it. But I want you to take this time to think about whether or not this is something you want to do." Same thing applied when I wanted a computer. She's like, "Well, if you want it next year, then we'll get you the computer." So it made you think, because she wanted to see if I was following trends, if I seriously wanted it, all these things, whatever. And so it really and what I didn't realize was with the computer is because she had 4 kids on her own. She didn't have a high school diploma. She was raising them on her own, and so she had to save that money. I didn't know that, and so I learned a big lesson about working hard and about being patient and taking time to get what you want, because it's not going to happen overnight. So, and I think just like with coming back with Catch the Craze, it was about being methodical, and planning. And I'm a big planner. I'm always thinking about, all right, what about if this happens, or if this happens, or if this happens. So I think I take that away from my mom and the lessons that I learned from her. We have Shannon in the waiting room. So we're going to continue this conversation because it's a good conversation right after our interview with Shannon. And so we're going to go to commercial. Hopefully the sound is working. Adios. Ayúdame. So we're going to go to Together. And then we're going to bring her in. There it is.
You read comics?
But do you read indie comics?
Do you support indie creators?
Indie creators in the arts.
Indie creators in comics, movies, music?
Well, so do we.
Subscribe to Catch the Craze on YouTube.
And let's support the indie community.
Together.
No doubt. So check the flow, cause I got soul. The name is Catch the Craze, baby. So act like you know what's called Catch the Craze. Catch the Craze.
Hello, welcome. Welcome back.
Thank you.
It's been a while.
Do the math on that. 2007 to now?
Yes, it's a long time. It's a long time. So glad to have you back. George Medina, my co-host.
Shannon,
Nice
how
to
are
meet
you?
you.
Nice to meet you. How you doing?
Doing all right, thank you.
All right. I like your background. You got all the information needed in your in your display there.
It's a pro.
How you been the last few months? I'm sure it's been a crazy time. I mean, it's been for everybody. How are you? How are you doing?
Holding up. Still have the full-time job
Good.
that I do, and glad that it was already the kind of thing that was very computer-based to begin with. So it's the weird part is more not getting to go out and do much, but
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of people have been going through a lot of difficult times. Just want to make sure you are doing well, but that's good. That's
how about
very
you? You
good.
guys doing okay?
Yeah. Been busy. I mean, Sam's totally remodeled the whole studio.
I'm
and
still
it's
working on it. Yes.
And he's still working on it. So yeah. So everything, we've been all right. But we're glad to have you, and we want to definitely talk about some of the stuff that you've been doing since, I guess, 2007, since the last time we spoke.
Yes. So let's just give a quick rundown. In 2007, you released the book. George, correct? Remind me what the book was, George.
Gardener's Guide to Writing and Producing Animation.
Yeah, there you go. See that? And you were screenwriting, and you worked for a lot of different organizations. And so let's talk about your journey from then to now.
Definitely. So, as you alluded to, everything in my background up to that point was in episode 94, which I understand has now been made available out of the archive. So if anybody's interested in that, you can listen to that in full. At this point that you're at, I mentioned in the prior one, I have listened to it since you put it up, that I was working on a second book called Gardener's Guide to Pitching and Selling Animation.
Mm-hmm.
It did ultimately come out, but not in print. This was right at the time where a lot of academia was flirting with trying to do ebooks, and so they were doing the DRM-based PDF books, and that's the only way that it came out. It was never in a printed form. I only found out about it when I got my first and only royalty check on that book.
Wow.
I was like, you mean it came out? So there may be some libraries out there that still have it in digital collections. I don't know, but I personally don't own a copy of it. So let's see, from that point, actually about the same time that I was completing that, I got a job at a long-standing virtual world called Neopets, which has an interesting history because it was originally created by two people who sold it to a gentleman named Doug Doring, who then turned around after a couple years and sold it to Viacom, the parent company of Nickelodeon. Mm-hmm. Doug Doring has since gone on and founded Age of Learning, ABC Mouse, which many of your listeners may have heard of. It's a site geared for teaching, reading, writing, other skills to young children, and probably in what's going on right now, I suspect they're getting a lot of use.
Yeah.
They're still very, very successful. Anyway, I come into the company a little while after Doring has sold it. And it wasn't a place I had initially thought that I would end up in. But I had previously come out of a website geared to animation called Animation World Network, where I had been working as a kind of a production coordinator of sorts, helping their web people get different assets and stuff together. But it was an experimental position for AWN, and they decided in the end it really wasn't working for them. So after 6 months, I found myself laid off and not knowing what I was going to do next.
Right.
And so I'm looking for jobs back in animation. And so I'm on the Viacom website looking for jobs in Nickelodeon animation again. I'd worked on Invader Zim before. It's like, what's out there? What's open? And so there was this position for a resource manager at Neopets. It had some skills that I didn't know, but a lot of things that translated into what I'd done in animation, and some of them that I had just been doing at AWN. And so I thought, okay, this will never amount to anything, but I'll try. Lo and behold, they called me back. And after jumping through a series of 5 different hoops of people I had to interview with, 4 in person and 1 on the phone, they hired me. And my job was to be aware of all the different programmers that we had. At that time, it was PHP and Flash programmers. And they would all make these different mini games that went into the virtual world. And as people were free from their projects, the project managers would come over and go, I need to start a new game. I need to start whatever. Who's available to do it right now? And I'd say, no, this person is, or this person will be available in 2 days, that kind of thing. And after I'd only been there about a week or so, one of the project managers very graciously said, we are starting on this whole project to relaunch the Neo Home, the homes for the pets. And it had been very limited originally. You didn't see your pet in the home or decorate the home or do anything like that. And in about a course of a week, the short story is they walked in to let me see the first evaluation with a bunch of the techs, and they were showing how they were going to build it. And I just looked at it. And my comment to this group of programmers was, have you ever seen The Sims? I'm going to date myself, but we're going back to like Sims 2 is out. And one of them knows what it is. The others don't.
Right.
And I have to then, we talk about it. We come back. I had a copy of it, but I think if I remember it, I hadn't currently installed it on my own computer for some reason. I think I just upgraded. And so I actually went home because I lived within walking distance at lunch, grabbed my copy of The Sims 2, came back, installed it, and said, this is what your people are expecting. And all of a sudden we changed it. And toward the end of this, there's a reason I was having to set that up, is that we got all the way down to the quality assurance part, the last few weeks where you test, does it work before you launch it out to the world? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, our project manager quit. Now, my boss at the time was the general manager there at Neopets because they were still hiring the person I should have reported to, the VP of Tech. So she takes me into the office and she says, do you think you can see this through to the end? And I'm like, there's 2 weeks left. We're just testing whether or not it's broken. Yeah, I think I can do this. Even though I didn't really have any much experience in that area and I was studying a few classes in it. And then the creative people and the stakeholders decided to start over. The weird part was they didn't take me off the project. So then I found myself without a lot of project management experience, essentially going from beginning to end, getting to actually launch this whole Neo Home thing. And so they kept me. And when they did their spin-off world, Pet Park, which has since closed, since Viacom sold Neopets a couple of years ago. But when they worked on that, which was a 2D, 3D integrated environment versus just more of the kind of flat home that we'd been doing, I wound up working with that group and spending some time with them. I'm needing to bring that up because I spent those few years on the production side, so there was still that relation to animation. But at that point, I was feeling that, I wasn't seeing what's happened now with all the streaming and all that. I really was starting to feel that kids were going to move for their storytelling into playing more online games. I wasn't sure what the future of TV and film animation was. And frankly, I'm happy I was wrong. But after a few years doing this, they had a major restructuring at Neopets, and I was essentially offered I could take a severance package or I could move over into doing quality assurance, which was basically testing everything that they made. And they were going to offer me the same amount of money. And it was right when the big recession hit. And I'm like, I can't just, a couple months of severance maybe. I'm like, but no, I don't know what I'm going to get. I don't know what's going to be out there. So I agreed to take the quality assurance position.
Right.
By 2011, I found myself laid off anyway.
Mm.
And as a result, ended up they stayed in entertainment, but they were various jobs in the quality assurance area. And I can't go into, they're in the quality assurance area, but within entertainment and often within children's programming. I'm not really at liberty to mention any of my past or current employers, but let's just say that's generally been my wheelhouse since 2011.
Right.
It's been good to have that kind of a day job, though. And when I've been outside of that, to be able to continue to pursue my creative endeavors, which is the gist of what I think we're going to get into for the rest of this. But since you started with the book, I felt that it was only fair to bring you up to where we're at today.
Excellent.
In the meantime, because I was doing so much of the contract freelance QA work, my creative side was like, I really want to work on starting to express myself. And as you can see in the background behind me, my husband and I continued to work on our webcomic, Flying Glory and the Hounds of Glory, which, by the way, turns 20 years old.
Wow.
Next June. When I last spoke to you, we were a little over 5 years old. So
that's amazing.
Right now, though, we're in a bit of a slump in creating new product on there because we moved from us creating a full HTML website to a WordPress-based website, and in the process, found that when he went to put some of the pages together in single PDF versions, we had problems with text not translating. In one case, we actually lost the original PSD page of one of the issues, so he had to completely recreate it from a different version that we had. I think it was a JPEG version, so he had to redraw the entire page. So we're still working on that, but by 2021, we're hoping to start to get new material back in the pipeline. It's been a bit of a challenge, but we love it, and like I said in the original interview, we'd love to sell or option the IP at some point. But if we just keep doing it because we love doing it, that's what matters to us.
It's amazing. The website is flying-glory.com.
Now, I was going to say, I also do own flyingglory.com, and it's set as a redirect if you forget the dash. But I couldn't initially get it. Was the deal.
Oh wow. Okay. And I was on the website. I was kind of browsing through the website. So are some of the things like the issues and the books, are they available for print? Like, can you buy those off of your website?
No, not at this point. The only thing that is available, and it's available in ebook form at this point, is at our 15th anniversary point, we did an ebook that contains the full poetic lyrics, if you will, to everything that's been written for the comic up to that point, which is pretty much everything that's up there now, except for a few shorts and sides that we've done in the last 4 years. I'm the one with the poetry background. My husband's the artist. I should say that I've since married Kevin Broden, and we've been married now for 5 years. My husband, Kevin, is the artist. We write it together. And anything you see in there that's woven in as song lyrics is poetry that I've written because I have an English degree.
Gotcha.
But nowhere on the site were the entire songs posted, or the full character bios and background. So there's a 99-cent ebook that we do have available that has all the lyrics and full character bios for folks. So that is a way to support us. But at this time, the print pages are still not available.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it could be very daunting when you're going from one system to the other to try to convert a lot of these things, and it sucks that you lost some of that stuff.
Fortunately, not as much as we thought, but there are a couple. Yeah. The other thing that we made sure to do when we're trying to restore the first few issues is, I talked about it briefly in '94, I think. was that there was a chance that we could sell it to somebody. And so we actually had done some additional pages to flesh out things that by the time we'd gotten much farther down the line, we're like, we really wish back then we had added these things. So we did like 5 or 6 new pages.
Yeah.
And so when we re-released it now, the public is seeing those pages for the first time. So even if you've originally saw issue 1 or issue 2 or issue 3, which I think he is pretty far along on, when those are out, 1 and 2 are out, 3 will be out. There will be things in there that people who have saw them in 2001 will never have seen before.
Wow.
So it was that important to us.
Good.
The biggest struggle with my husband, and I don't think he'll mind me saying this, is there some stuff when we did it in 2001, he looks at these first 3 issues and he's like, I can do this way better. The backgrounds are bad. And so I have to have little debates with him like, okay, I see what you mean. Okay, yes, you can redraw this panel and this panel, but leave the rest of it. Or sometimes it'll be like, no, I definitely see what you mean. The one where we never had to talk about redrawing an entire page except for the one we had it, he'd done it in black and white. We had a color of only the first 3 issues, but then we had to go back to black and white when we made this new compilation I was telling you about. And somewhere in the process of making that new compilation is where the page disappeared. But all he could find was that colorized version from before. The original black and white master that he'd done the color from.
Yeah.
I can't find it. Okay, you got to redraw that one. I get you.
Oh, that's terrible. So for the audience who don't know, tell us what Flying Glory and the Hounds of Glory is about. What is the premise behind the book?
Sure. It started with an idea that Kevin had for a female superhero from World War II. And after he and I met, I'm like, okay, this is cool. And he had tried to sell it to a comic publisher. This was years ago. This was in the 90s. And they were interested, but they didn't think they could sell it to a modern audience. And after he met me, I said, well, why don't we do something to try to make her story? We don't touch anything about Elsie's story, but why don't we make a connection to make it accessible to a modern audience? How would you feel if she had a granddaughter who inherited the powers, who was into music, was into rock and roll, and all of a sudden those powers woke up one day, she didn't know what to do with them. And here she is with her friends and her band, and like, I kind of like that. And so we just sort of met in the middle, and the whole thing came from there. And what you see now is the result of that collaboration. The biggest trick for us with the time passing is we're telling the story still at the pace that it should be told, which means we're not caught up to 2020 unless you see, actually we're only caught up to 2019 and what's on the web now, but we know we've had a long scale timeline for this for years. It's like we knew where certain people went, we knew who they married, we knew who their kids were. We're now at the point where their kids are teenagers on the map that we originally started. So we're like, okay. And that's part of some of the stuff that we want to do next year as part of the 20th is where are their kids now? Where are they today? And so there's going to be a couple teases of that as to, I don't want to make too many commitments because a lot of it's going to depend on his schedule and what he can do, because I can only turn as fast as he can draw. But we have definitely been talking about it. And I know there are some things that we will do. And I am absolutely looking forward to it.
That's amazing. That is so cool. It's so cool to have like a duo like yourself or like your husband yours, and you write, and then you guys get together and do these things, because you guys can crank out a lot of. And it all depends on obviously your schedules, like you say. But it's nice to have that, be able to say, hey, I just wrote this. What do you think? And have that collaboration right at home. That's awesome. So you guys are going to continue doing it. Obviously, you're in your 20th year. It almost sounds like what they used to do with the soap operas, where they would start and then they would just continue, and like families would be built and grow. Was this always the plan for the book, or is that just kind of like what happened?
It's kind of a combination. I don't know what would have happened if we'd gone faster. Part of it is also my influence of liking family saga stories, having grown up with my own mother watching soap operas as a kid.
Yeah.
So I bring some of that in there because I like family dynamics. That's the kind of things I like, where he likes telling character stories, but he's also more of the action person.
Sure.
So in that respect, we kind of complement each other. Anyway, I'd also like to talk about some of the other things that I have written in between. And
yeah, absolutely.
It all started again with a nudge from Kevin. I noticed that he was interested in an area of writing that tends to term itself as new pulp. The idea of like the content that would be in the old pulp magazines, but told in new, refreshing, and different ways. And he'd made contact with a company called Pro Se Press. Well, largely, their larger name is Pro Se Productions. Pro Se Press is their publishing division. And he was looking over a pitch for something that, where I should say, Pro Se Press had open calls. They still do some for different books, different ideas that they were soliciting stories for. And there was one he was seriously looking at. And I said, I'm interested in that too. Would you be okay if we both went after this? And the project was also interesting to me because it made a good segue from, now I have a degree in English, but at this point I hadn't had many short stories published. I'd had one done, early 2000s, called Cover Story. Book's long out of print. It was in a book called Arya Calzan and the Mysteries of the Future. And again, in that case, there was a kind of a Bible, a structure that was set up by the publisher, and we were pitching stories, which is more like television and film. Well, TV more than film, where they have the Bibles that go out to the writers and you pitch ideas. Well, this particular book that Kevin was considering also had the same thing. The publisher had a place and characters and a structure like that. And I thought, okay, for a first foray into trying to pitch for print again after that one shot I just kind of fell into, thought, I'll give this a try instead of going totally from scratch, because it had been so long since I'd written anything in prose. I don't know how well this will show up on screen, but I'll try this. Mm-hmm. The result, trying to see, there we go. Nope, because my background is eating it.
Yeah.
If you go to the Shannon Muir author page,
yeah,
on the Shannon Muir site, if you go under there, it'll say Shannon Muir author. And if people go on that page, they will see everything I'm about to talk about and the buy links to them. The name of this book is Newshounds. And basically the publisher had set up a Bible of characters that were working for a newspaper in the 1950s, wanting to expose truth and justice, which is kind of the everyman in a superhero sort of way.
Right.
And I went, I kind of like this. So there were two female characters, and I did a pitch with those female characters in the lead, which was a challenge to do, given it was the 50s. Basically, it was the photographer and the one female reporter that they had. And I found an excuse to manage to, excuse sounds lame, but to actually have them have to disguise themselves and switch roles. It was a challenging thing to do to deal against that time period. I personally believe I did it successfully. Kevin's pitch was also accepted for the book. Mm. And he has the cover. So for our first accepted prose stories, we're in the same book with each other, and he drew the cover.
That's awesome.
So that was 2013. Like I said, I wanted to make sure that I could keep the creative juices flowing while I was doing the contracting thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the relationship continued with Pro Se Press for a couple of years. But from that point forward, I'd go for the open submissions where they were looking for a theme, and then you'd pitch your own ideas and they'd decide whether or not they fit the theme.
Right.
So, no, not early 2015. It would have been 2014. The book actually came out in 2015. There was a solicitation for a book that was containing female leads. I'm like, I like this. So I did a pitch for a Prohibition era torch song singer whose father was a private eye that mysteriously died, and she wants to find out who killed him. It's called Tragic Like a Torch Song, and it was accepted for The Dame Did It, which was published in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the one I'm still of the four that I've done for Pro Se Press. I think that's the one that I still like the best. Well, I mean, that's of the four that are in anthologies. There's actually 5, and I'll explain that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
It's also interesting that in a book about female leads, there are 4 stories. I am the only female author in the book.
Yeah, I see that.
The other 3 are all guys.
Cover. Yeah, I'm looking at the cover.
Okay, you found the page in the meantime.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you have The Dame Did It. I see other things here too. You have The Explorer Pulp.
Right. Crime Down Island.
Crime Down Island. Yep, Crime Down Island. Now these are items in print now, right?
Yeah, all 4 of these are available in ebook and print. They are still available.
Sweet.
Crime Down Island's interesting for me because it's the first story that I did where my lead is actually male. I generally tend to be more comfortable writing about women, but that one, there's also an interesting comfort zone factor because I set it in Hawaii, but I knew the time period.
Right.
Because as I talked about in episode 94, my dad was in the military service and we lived in Hawaii in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
I actually set the Crime Down Island story Thanksgiving weekend during what I believe is still one of the top 5 hurricanes to go through Hawaii. I actually lived through that at 10 years old. Like, our power was out for 2 days. We lost all our Thanksgiving food. I remember celery, carrots, and peanut butter. That was what you called Thanksgiving that year. And so I'm like, okay.
That was in 82, right, Shannon?
Yeah, 1982. That's correct.
Yeah. Wow.
And so that, that was the first time I did a story where I could actually draw from things that I remembered and personal experience, even though obviously I was neither adult nor male. His entire background, where he is, he's not in the military housing area, but he lives in the town that was adjacent to where I lived. So I completely set it in areas that I knew. Now, the one I haven't named of that group that you're probably seen has a big, giant, old-fashioned microphone on it called Ghost of the Airwaves.
Yes.
Now, Ghost of the Airwaves is a little interesting because it's a single short story sold by itself for 99 cents. It's not in a book. The publisher had a quarterly magazine that he was doing, and I wrote that story to be pitched to there. Unfortunately for me, well, I guess not that unfortunately because it still got published, but he decided to discontinue the magazine about the time I sent it in. However, he then decided to create this single shot line, and anybody who had submitted that he felt was worth publishing, he was going to put out as 99-cent short stories. And Ghost of the Airwaves was selected in that batch. So that's why it's released the way it is, and it is only in the format that I've mentioned. Kindle primarily, and Smashwords is the other way. It's not as widely distributed in ebook as some other things are,
Gotcha.
but it is out there. But that was those few years in there. the last stuff you're talking about, Explore Pulp and Crime Down Island, came out, I think, in 2017.
Yeah.
At that point, I moved from being a consultant to an employee role at the place where I am currently employed.
Mm-hmm.
And my time for actually writing and the amount of effort for pitching out to people for like short stories has gone down considerably. That's not to say I'm not working on my own novels when I have time or anything like that, because I am.
Yeah.
But my time is a lot more limited now that I'm back as an employee. But as you guys have asked me there at the very beginning when I first logged on with you, it's one thing I'm kind of happy about in the current climate we're in is if I wasn't an employee now, my life might be a lot different. So right now I feel okay with that trade-off. As to what's in the future writing wise, I don't know, but I am actively working on projects, and when things line up, you never know.
Yeah, no, of course. What is your preference when writing, Shannon? Do you prefer prose or do you prefer script writing, or what's your preference when it comes to writing? Do you have a preference?
Some things work better in one medium than another. I'll admit that I miss script writing. I don't think that we talked much in detail when I was here before, because it was around the same time period as the book that I did get to do a few animation scripts for a show that was in Japan called Midnight Horror School.
Yeah.
And it was produced in Japan. My husband and I were the only Western writers on it. They went and marketed it to the rest of the world, and most of the rest of the world picked it up to dub in their local languages. The US was one of the few places they did not pick it up.
That's great.
And the way I heard it there's a couple people that I know, that I know down the line, and I had said, I know this was marketed out here, because we'd run into somebody who actually had some of the bling, was at some meeting, and she had her phone and it was covered with these stickers, and my husband and I are looking, it's like, isn't that so-and-so and so-and-so from Midnight Horror School? We're looking at it. Yeah. And so I knew the company that she worked for, because I had one of those like coffee meets at some point with the fellow that headed development there. So I knew him. And so I got in touch and I said, hey, is it true that this show like came across through there? He says, and he admitted, yeah, we didn't know what to do with it. It's like, it was cute. Sometimes some of the Japanese animation can be very cute. And the premise was cute about these little things that got lost under desks and stuff at night at a school, or kids just lost stuff all over the campus, right? And then when everybody's gone home at night, they wake up and learn to become the wonders of the world. And again, because nobody could actually learn enough to graduate, it had to become stories about the journey, not the destination, which was challenging. But to your point, the thing was, though, they were very Tim Burton-esque designs. Sorry, I want to explain why that didn't sell. Nice scripts that would have played to a preschool audience, but Tim Burton-like designs.
Yeah.
They couldn't deal with it. Like, I hear you, but different. Let me put it straight. Depending on the stories you're trying to tell, different stories are sometimes best told in different ways. That said, I have seen some very good things that are inspired from one source, say like prose, that get turned into a movie, and sometimes they're better than the original, sometimes they're not. It's, for me personally, I think I do better in script writing because I don't have to describe tons of like what things look like. It's more about people and what people are saying and what people are feeling. Mm-hmm. I learned how to do all that descriptive stuff when I was working on my English degree.
Sure.
Actually, when I got a double BA in English and in radio TV, so I originally learned them both simultaneously. Mm-hmm. But because I'd done so much work in in script writing in sense. When I went back to prose, I now find that being descriptive is a struggle for me. I'll go from someone says to someone says to someone says. That I find that if I look at it, it's like, oh wait, this is like you took a scene and turned it into prose, and then in my rewrites I always have to go back and actually like, what do you need to describe here? Right. And it's in a way it's actually turned into a little bit of a handicap. Yeah. But there are some things some getting inside the head is not well done on the screen, and stories that really gear themselves to a lot of action sometimes are better told on the screen instead of blocks and blocks of prose. That said, I tend to be slightly envious of my husband because in a way he can do both. He can draw, without needing to work for a studio or a large group of people by being able to do a comic, and he can write too. So technically he can tell any story he wants and do all those things that way. That's the one thing I wish I could do. And that's why I'm happy when he lets me collaborate with him. But and I know you guys have some comic background. At least I remember Sam does. So that's the most amazing thing to me.
Yeah, the reason why I asked you that question is because I have a friend of mine who's a writer also, and we go back and forth. And to him, one of the hardest things to write is prose. So when we talk about, okay, what's harder, prose or script writing? He says, what, prose to him is harder because you have to keep people engaged and turning that page with just your words. There are no images to you can fall back on and say, oh, that image looks cool. They're going to turn the page because of the image. It's your word. It's your word that's going to make them turn it. And so that becomes I don't want to say the struggle, but the challenge, right? The challenge is that.
Definitely. I mean, there are some publishers that do intersperse words with images, hiring people to do pictures. And that's the main thing my husband's doing on the side now, is that part of the reason I don't have him full-time for Flying Glory is he's been doing illustrations for another new pulp publisher called Airship 27. And they like having illustrations for their short stories, for their novels. And they've hired him to do several of those. And so unfortunately, they're beautiful, and I love what it's bringing to the airship stuff. But it's sort of like, I want to get through another issue, but publisher needs X number of drawings. I know, but so that's a tough one too.
Yeah, of course. So tell us a little bit about what's in the future. Like, other than, like you said, your husband's doing that kind of stuff, what are you working on as far as like what people can see and what you'll be working on?
Well, like I said, at this point, there's nothing that's immediate. There are a couple of short stories that I put out there for some anthologies that I did finish, but unfortunately not everything you do gets accepted, and they all came back with rejection letters. At this point, as I said, you keep on trying. You don't give up, and you keep at it. I wish I could say there was stuff for the immediate future, but there's also, I haven't done, this is the first real appearance that I've done in a while outside of one place that I do get called back in semi-regularly. There is a podcast called Let's Voltron, which is dedicated to the Voltron animated series and all of its incarnations. And I'm known in the fandom going back to the 1984 version. And back in 2015, not realizing how far back my connections went, I told this story in 94 about meaning episode 94, about how I first got in contact with Mark Handler from Voltron. But the two guys from Let's Voltron only knew about me from the incarnation of Voltron, the Third Dimension, where, because I had done some conjecturing on my site as to how the star map for the world must be, the company World Events had reached out to me back then, that was 2000-ish, and said, we want to do a visual star map on our site, meaning the World Events production site. We would like to use what you have as a base, and we'll pay you something for it. So basically we made a deal. And so most of the fandom knew me because World Events had essentially put their stamp of approval on me by putting, this is my stuff and here it is. But here we are at that point. I said 2015, the show had ended airing in 2000. So 15 years later, they tracked me down because they wanted to do a special multi-parter on Voltron, the Third Dimension. And I'm like, okay, sure. And I appear on it with them. And as we're talking, then I tell them, going all the way back to what originally happened and how I totally got into animation to begin with because of Voltron, and this was all new to them. And so ever since then, as they've done different things like looking back at classic episodes, where I've met up with them at WonderCon or Comic-Con when they've gone to cover other things, because one of the two hosts, Mark Morrell, also has done some stuff for Toonborn. So we've, pre-COVID, I would get to see him like all those places. Yeah. They would then call me in on their shows for like WonderCon in review, or since it was largely around when Voltron Legendary Defender was out, as every season of that was coming out, and they'd be covering it. There'd be panels about it at either Wonder or Comic-Con, and I'd keep getting called in. Sometimes I got called in for episode reviews of the original show, which is what they've been doing since Legendary Defender ended. And so that's where you can hear me most of the time currently. But like I said, as far as the writing end of things, not so much at the moment. Gotcha. I'm just happy to be of service when people, want and need help from me. It's one of the things I enjoy most is trying to help others. And one of the things I'm really excited about is all the creativity that I've seen come up in recent years. And it was so, when I got to the end of re-listening to episode 94, and I was talking about how, at that point, I was talking about how all these platforms were opening up and I hoped people would take off. Even then, I wouldn't have imagined the amount of things that we've seen blow open since. And I love seeing it happen. I love that it's so much easier for individual artists to be able to be creative in whatever their medium is.
Yeah. It's really boomed, right? Like, it's like if you want to do something, you can do it. Like, we brought back the podcast, but bringing it back, we realized how many more podcasters there are than there were when we first started, and like, everybody's got a podcast, because everybody's got something they want to talk about and things like that. And then, it's great. It's great. As far as you said you like helping others. For a young writer who's watching the show right now, Shannon, what would be like a piece of advice that you would give them, and you would, speaking directly to them, what would you say to them if they were trying to get into, say, whether it's script writing, whether it's animation, whether it's, it's prose, like what would you say to them?
Whatever it is that you're trying to get into, make sure that you get to know the medium well. Read and write, and if you're a writer, you could be an artist or draw, like, work to get better at your craft. Definitely don't give up. I'm going to have to echo what you just said, though, in the idea that one of the downsides is that it's because there is a lot more out there, it's a lot harder to be seen, even though the platforms are there for you to be seen.
It's true.
The biggest thing I'd say is, even if you're scared, do your best to get over that and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I know that was the hardest thing for me to do. I mean, I moved down here to LA, and in 1996, like, I'm going to be a writer. Midnight Horror School didn't happen for like almost another 10 years after that. And partially it was a lot of my own slowness, my own caution, my own fears. It's one of the things that's very different now is that back then it was so much easier to network and find mentors when you're young and just starting out. And now that those people are online, some of them, if you reach out to them, are very receptive. I've heard from some people that this cannot go as well sometimes with others. Sometimes it's just the fact that they don't have the time because they're so much easier to find and they're deluged with things. But yeah, there is so much more material out there if you're just trying to learn. I think of myself. I was lucky enough to live in a college town. For me to learn everything that I wanted to learn as a teenager, I made sure to get rights to go to the university library. I checked out every single book there was on writing to read before I had even started going there to try to learn from any of the professors. And I just, tried very hard on my own to learn what I could. My biggest fear, I guess, is I'm afraid that the pandemic is just going to discourage some people even more because they're already feeling like they're so limited in parts of their lives. And it's with so much stuff online. I hope that people don't feel that way.
Right.
That there is stuff at your fingertips. Go look for it. It is most definitely there. I know that's a really long answer to your question, but I know there's a lot of young talent out there, particularly in areas, minority young talent that deserves to be heard.
Right.
And in my heart, I want to make sure that they're found, and we've got to figure out ways to make that happen.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I think the key to what you said is don't give up, no matter how scared you may be, because those fears really are just, they'll stop you on your tracks. The minute you start feeling, uncomfortable or fearful, you'll just quit. It's just easy to say, okay, I'm done. I can't do this. So yeah, not giving up. And I appreciate you saying that, because I think that it carries weight when you hear it from somebody who, has had, in my opinion, the success you've had in this field, which is not an easy field to be successful in, especially with, like you said, all of the competition that's out there, all of the other writers that are out there. So thank you. And I appreciate you spending the time with us and talking to us.
I appreciate you giving me the time. It's meant a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Sam, you have anything?
No, I mean, thank you for connecting again. I'm glad to see that you have been working in the field that you are passionate about, and that things are working out. And we'd love to follow up with you next year and see what the progress is then, because while we did take a 10-year hiatus, we are back to stay. And so you're welcome anytime.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.
You got
it.
No
worries. Thank you, Shannon. And listen, they obviously can find you at Shannon Muir. And pronounce your last name for me, because I don't want to. I'm pronouncing it, but I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right.
No problem. Correct pronunciation is Muir.
Muir. Okay.
Yeah.
Muir. Yes. So Shannon-Muir.com, and it's right there on the screen. Flying Glory and the Hounds of Glory. Check that out. Check that website out as well. And then on your website, you have that, that area where your published works are, so we can check those out, the ebooks. Thank you again for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
You got it. Thanks
Thank
again.
you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. So that was back to the main screen. I moved us. It's amazing how powerful her message was. Mm-hmm. Towards the end when you asked her for advice, and it really hits home when you think about it. It's I have not settled in on the damage and the impact that this has done, right? Mm-hmm. I look at what's happening all around, and I'm programmed to block things out. That's always when I lost my mom, I blocked it out. I didn't deal with it for 4 years, and when it hit me 4 years later, I crashed. So I tend to block things out. And then when I was listening to her, I couldn't help but reflect and think about the people that we've lost this year from the pandemic, people that we've gone to cons with, that we worked with, that the amount of people that lost their jobs,
Right.
the amount of chaos that's going on, all the uncertainty and the fear. I mean, I'm a victim of working for an organization that went belly up and bankrupt, and now
And this was a big organization. It was something that was not supposed to happen.
It
right?
wasn't
When you're
supposed to
working
happen.
for a company like what you were working for, you're supposed to have a job. This isn't a
Yes.
small business that couldn't make it. This is a large corporation. So when something like that happens, that's when you're like, wow, like reality strikes, right? It can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
And and to piggyback on your point, Sam, I know that for an hour and a half, when you guys are listening to us, and I'm talking to the audience now, when you're listening to us, we keep it positive. We know that there is a lot of stuff going out there, and sometimes you may think that these guys aren't even addressing it. It's not that we're not addressing it, is that for that hour and a half or for that hour and 15 minutes that you're kind of tuning into us, we want you to escape from that stuff. We all know what's happening. For that hour, we want you to focus on what you love to do, which is, be an independent artist, take the advice that we old men are trying to give you because of the mistakes that we've made.
What are you talking about?
Listen to the up and coming artists that you may have never heard of before. So that's our goal, not to ignore what's happening, not to say, hey, it's not happening. It is. Right. But like you said, Sam, when you hear a person like Shannon there speak from the heart and talk and speak the way she was speaking, it really makes you think like, damn.
Yeah, I paused because I was watching how, for that moment, you can see or you can feel the emotion that was coming with her through her message, and I had to pause for a second and start trying to process it, and but then there's this thing in me that I don't want to process it, and I just want to keep fighting through it, and and I think that's even with it's doubling down on the chaos and saying I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to try to work for myself, knowing that the first few months that there's no revenue coming in, figuring out how to survive through that. Well, I've been working since I was 12 years old, and I've always worked for somebody else. Now I'm trying to work for myself without a nickel in the pocket, and that's the scary part. So when she started delivering her message, I had to reflect on, Sam, you're a little crazy. But I mean, she's done a lot in the industry, and she's has longevity because of the consistency. It's I think I'd love to see what happens next year, and if they finish their projects together. But yeah, it was I truly enjoyed just listening to the process. Yeah, she was able to walk you through the process, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I mean, and going back to what we were talking about in the Get Your Meds segment, where we were talking about advice.
Advice.
Right? So the best advice, and I think we talked. I mean, I talked about what I felt like the best advice has been. You talked about what you felt and her advice was also very good, right? Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Fight through it. Fight through the fear. We're all afraid. Fight through it. Get out there. Put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because you never know. She said she moved to LA in '96. It took a while for her to do it, but she finally got that writing gig she wanted for that Japanese company, So it as long as you persevere, it'll happen, And
yeah, we
so
talked
I
about
think
that
that's
earlier
really nice.
offline. I think we were talking about the Kickstarter. And one of the things, being away for 10 years, coming back, coming up with a new concept, launching the comic book where no one's heard of us in the game for, they don't know who the hell we are. And so we had no major marketing campaign, but it was just hustle. So we launched a Kickstarter with an aggressive, well, some would say it was aggressive for an unknown, $2,500 was the goal. But it was a constant grind daily. And, where the whole, the work paid off because every single day we made it important. And like I told you before, every day I was looking at the Kickstarter as if that was the last day to make the goal. You know what I mean? And that's how I was hustling. And I think that's I think work pays off in the long run. If you are a boxer and you train for the fight, and you were constantly following the routines, and you were eating right, and you were sleeping, and you were going, and you were training, and you were sparring, chances are the odds are in your favor. But if you pull a stunt like Conor McGregor did, where he fought Khabib for the title, and Conor was partying, and he was getting in trouble with the law, and he was drinking, and he wasn't taking it seriously because he got cocky because he made $100 million fighting Floyd Mayweather, he lost, right? And so it's either you get lazy or you commit 100% to your craft. And I like the message. Just muscle your way through it.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's funny. You say McGregor, you think about Mike Tyson, right? The day he lost, the night before, the night before he lost, he was out partying. He didn't take Buster Douglas serious. Okay, what happens? You get knocked out. You get knocked out and you lose. And then your career is never the same again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right, dude. And I think that, before we
snaps.
before the show ends, again, and we'll say this at every show, but thank you very much for everybody, speaking of the Kickstarter, who supported the Kickstarter. We are early. So you will be getting that before the February deadline. Now, I say that now. I can't tell the future. It's November. So if it doesn't happen, you can't even blame me because it's the future. I can't tell the future. So, but we are trying to get this thing out. All jokes aside, we're trying to get it out to you by December, which is around this time. And hopefully we can have it out to you guys. Maybe some of you already have it in your hands. I don't know. We don't know. It's the future.
And with that said, also, we will be launching our second Kickstarter January 14th, January 14th. And that is a, Thursday or Monday?
It's a Thursday, yeah.
It's a Thursday. So we're going to launch for issue number 2, January 14th.
Yes.
And so the whole goal is, so we are currently in November. We have all the final pages. George is just about done lettering it. I'm working on the cover as we speak. It should be heading off to the printers within 9 days from now. And all the collateral will be heading off to the printers. I'm currently sketching all the sketch cards for you guys out there. So our goal is to have it to you guys by Christmas. So let's see.
Which is next week, which is what's tricky about this whole thing, right? So
Christmas time is here.
Christmas will be next week. And we're talking about what we're doing back in November because it is November.
But we're hustling because we appreciated all your support. Yeah. We want to get it to you early. We want to get it into your hands early. What a great way is to end the year with the Crazies in everybody's hands.
So just going back to why we moved the date, because originally it was always going to be December. But what happened was when we first announced that we were going to come out, we had an artist, and then he
bounced.
Bailed. So what happened was we had to get another artist, and we didn't know how long it was going to take him to do the book. So we said, you know what, let's play it safe. We'll say February. But this artist knocked it out. Like he, boom, 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 the pages were in.
Knock him out the box, Rick. Knock him out the box.
It's November 10th, and the high-res pages are in our hands. So I'm lettering. We're literally, like Sam said, sending the book out next week. So, So thank you everybody for the support on the Crazies. January 14th, issue number 2, Kickstarter will be debuting. And next week we're gonna have our guest will be Richard Davis, who I think you're gonna enjoy that interview. Very good interview. The Cult of Dracula is his book. I know it's Christmas.
That was a good interview. That was a real good interview.
Very good. So check that out next week. The topic is going to print, which is right around the holidays for all those independent artists who are wondering where to print their books from to get it to people in their hands. We'll have a little list of printers that you guys can use. So check that out. I'm done, man. What do you got?
I'm
Anything
not.
else?
I'm not done. I got a whole lot of stuff. Hold on. I'm like Carrot Top. I got that chest, and I'm gonna keep pulling stuff out. So they're like, "Who Carrot Top?" You know, he was the guy that he was very funny. Then he started juicing and started getting all muscular in his neck. And then I was like, "Yo, what? Yo, I don't know. I think he got picked on, and then he just started to pump." And he got diesel. I've been working out forever, and I still can't get that way. So we're hoping by this time our Patreon is up. And the thing is because I'll be working on it on my last day of employment and my first day of being an entrepreneur, or a lahu the her. We'll see what happens. But I'll be launching the Patreon, and so there's a lot of great incentives to be a member of our Patreon, and I'm working on all that stuff on the back end, so it takes a lot of time. It took me 6 weeks to get this studio set up, and you're only seeing one direction of it, but if you go back and you'll see the whole full studio, and when we have George in the studio, you'll see the long shot and all the other stuff. But yeah, so hopefully the Patreon will be up. The guest cards are going. What else? I think that's about it. Christmas is around the corner. Make sure now that we're all home, take the time to be in the moment with your family. So Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, put the phone down, put the computer away, and be in the moment. Spend that time with your family. Give them a hug. You can always get that phone back on the day after Christmas. But try to be in the moment. One of the things that we suffer as a society is that we're so distracted by so much noise that we don't know how to connect on a personal level. So take that time. It's one day out of your time. No grudges. No complaining that there was not enough salt in the food. Just say thank you. Give your family a hug. I appreciate you. I'm glad I'm not going through this alone. And if you do happen to be going through this alone, you know what? You're not, because in the universe, we're being watched. So give thanks that we're on this planet. Give thanks that we're still breathing, and give thanks that that tomorrow's gonna be a better day. I'm Sam, the crazy man, Vera.
Amen. And I can't hear the beat, but George, the Dreamer Medina, baby. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you next time. See you next week. Peace. It's just easy. It's not.
Crazy.
Acquiesce. No, I was talking about my friend Acquiesce. Say my name, right?
This is what you were thinking? Oh my God.
He described me. He said, I'm the
What? Catch the Craze. You're listening to Catch the Craze. You're listening to Catch the Craze. Catch the Craze. You are listening to Catch the Craze. This is Craze. You're listening to Catch the Craze.
Candy girl.